Iron Man survived the assault of the monstrous Stark Sentinels and was able to save Emma Frost by using his armor. Now he is without armor and still captive by the Stark Sentinels. How will he survive this? And in the end, help is on the way for Rhodey.
Tony Stark was badly hurt in front of two huge Stark Sentinels. One of them pointed at Tony while Fei Long watched on his screen. Unsure of what to do, but just in the nick of time, the Avengers arrived to save Tony. This made Fei Long abandon Tony and carry on his search for Emma Frost and the Mark 70 armor. The Sentinel immediately left Tony, after which Captain America suggested to take him to the hospital, but Tony refused. He did not want his friends, the Avengers, helping him out, as he wanted Fei Long to believe he is beaten and at his worst. He started walking away and announced that he had a new suit and would keep being an Avenger. Tony then headed towards a nearby subway, the same one Emma had used earlier. As he walked along the tracks, he thought about his life. Tony continued deeper into the subway tunnels. Tony crawled in a tiny opening in the sewer, and there his armor stood motionless. He muttered the words, "Open Sesame," and the Mark 70 armor sprang open, revealing an upset Emma Frost inside. Emma was repulsed by the suit but quickly noticed Tony's injuries. Tony settled down and told Boss, his AI assistant, to turn on the lights. He asked Emma if she was okay, but Emma was puzzled about how he had escaped the Stark Sentinels. Tony explained that Fei Long was cunning not to kill him, but he was sure Fei Long had a plan to end him in the future. Emma inquired if there was a reason Tony had sent her and the armor to the Marlock tunnels. Tony replied that he didn't even know where they were. He had just been searching for a place without a signal, because if he couldn't get a signal, Fei Long couldn't either. Tony handed his phone to Emma saying, "They're looking for you and they've got the law on their side. There are Interpol warrants." Emma took the phone and replied, "You mentioned this as though the human world matters to me." She read the phone's message, which stated mutant massacre, no human survivors, shocking her to her core. Tony revealed that Vision had confirmed the mutant medicine was tainted with a complex drug, possibly a kill switch, but couldn't identify the culprit. Emma suspected it was a perfect setup, and Tony agrees and mentioned that Rhodey was in trouble as well due to framing. Emma then realized she couldn't sense her girls anymore and did not know if they were still alive. Tony tried to comfort her, but Emma rejected it. Tony encouraged Emma not to give into despair. He had to leave but promised to be back in a few hours with a plan to hide Emma. However, Emma remained disheartened by the recent events, wondering if they were all dead. As Tony walked away, he responded to Emma, "Then you avenge them." Meanwhile, in prison, She-Hulk went to see Rhodey. She wanted to find out what happened in the attack on him. But Rhodey did not want to spill the beans because he was worried it would cause more trouble. Despite Rhodey's reluctance, She-Hulk decided to pay a visit to the prison warden. She issued a threat to him. In response, the warden said, "We don't offer special protection for killers here in Texas," with a cocky expression on his face. This made She-Hulk furious and she stormed out there in anger. At Tony's hidden house, he's deep into working on something. He tells his AI boss to call She-Hulk. When She-Hulk gets on the line, she shares the upsetting news that Rhodey is in a life or death struggle in prison. Hearing this, Tony slips a ring into his pocket, which he had created, and becomes furious. He started wrecking the Mark 70 armor. Finally, She-Hulk advises Tony to hand over the armor to Fei Long and get a new lawyer. She explained that she'll have to drop Tony as her client so she can continue working with Rhodey. At Stark Unlimited, Fei Long takes a selfie with a fan, and outside, the Mark 70 armor is flying towards the glass door. Suddenly, the armor smashes through the door, shattering the glass and lands in front of Fei Long. Tony raises his voice, telling Fei Long to stop the attack on Rhodey and warns him about the consequences. Fei Long brushes off the threat and steps onto the Mark 70 armor, locking eyes with Tony. Tony walks away and notices his reflection in a liquor store window. He takes a moment to catch his breath and continues walking. Tony then enters a wig shop instead. Tony goes back to the Morlock tunnels where he found Emma. He delivers some grim news to her about Sentinels hunting mutants and rumors of deportations to Araco. Emma, with a furious expression, responds, "Krakoa is nearly gone, and you and the rest of the Avengers seems to have other priorities." Tony isn't having any of it and raises his voice, blaming Emma for not heeding his warnings. However, Emma dismisses Tony's accusation, insisting that Tony should have been the one listening. Tony shouts at Emma that he is not like Fei Long, and that Fei Long will sacrifice his best friend just to get to him. Emma uses her power to calm Tony down, and Tony finally admits that it's all his fault and that he needed help, which were difficult words for him to say. We step into Stark Industries where Tony is feeling confused about recent events. Emma explains that she has used her powers to transport Tony and her to a comforting place surrounded by his armor. They stand among Tony's suits, and Tony mentioned that he is writing a memoir. Emma tells him she already read it and didn't find it very good. Tony gave an excuse, then says he needs at least 2 new suits, but Emma points out that will be costly. Suddenly, the armor starts hovering around them, and Tony declares that it's war. He is willing to risk his life for this cause, but he wants to do it strategically. Emma warns that time isn't on their side and reveals that they took everything from her but failed to kill her. She believes this was their biggest mistake and it would lead to their downfall. Tony and Emma agreed to form an alliance, and they needed to be smart about their approach. Tony gave Emma a special ring he made from the psi shield of the Mark 70 armor. This ring would help hide Emma's power so that the Stark Sentinels couldn't detect her. Tony also handed her a wig, suggesting that she should use the Persona Hazel candle unless she had other alias in mind. Emma puts on the ring. We then see Tony and Hazel walking in the streets. Tony is puzzled about their destination, but Hazel is surprised that Tony doesn't recognize the place. They arrive at the gates of the Hellfire Club, and Emma explains that this is where they can seek help for Rhodey. She knocks on the doors, revealing to Tony that she has transferred her money to a third party for security. Mr. Reddick answers the door and lets Tony and Hazel inside. Tony introduces himself and mentions that his father was a member. Mr. Reddick then redirects Tony to a door to meet the White King, leaving Tony stunned by what he saw. The comic ends with Kingpin, the new White King, looking at Tony. He welcomes Tony and says, "We have much to discuss, let's get down to business."
Finally, Tony has some sort of plan in motion to defeat Fei Long with a new form alliance with Emma Frost. I can't wait to see how they defeat Fei Long and save Rudy in prison. Subscribe so you don't miss out when the next episode drops. This is Carl and see you in the next one.